GOTY is easily the most anticipated award among gamers, and it looks like this year the competition is really heating up. While fans thought Elden Ring had things in the bag as 2022's Game of the Year, the new God of War Ragnarok trailer has led to many people having second doubts. In today's video, we'll see if it can actually compete with Elden Ring for GOTY. So let's dive right in. First off, lightning can't strike twice. Studio Sony Santa Monica is no stranger to Game of the Year awards. Their 2018 God of War game was the year's winner of the acclaimed accolade, and fans are now thinking that they may be able to do it yet again.
I don't need this to make me whole.
We stopped his madness. That's all that matters.
This newfound hope comes from the game's newest trailer, which was showcased at the Sony PlayStation State of Play. The presentation brought to us one of the best God of War trailers we've ever seen. Not only is it filled with iconic imagery and dialogues from the game, but it gives us the thing gamers are hungry for the most: sweet, sweet gameplay. It's clear that Sony didn't want to hold back anything with this new trailer, and they showed us as much as they could reasonably showcase without outright spoiling the game. By doing so, they've successfully managed to counter a common complaint among naysayers, which is that God of War Ragnarok is nothing more than just an overhyped DLC for the first game, rather than a full-fledged sequel. While the complaint was baseless to begin with, it's clear Sony Santa Monica has crushed it in one fell swoop with just how jam-packed the latest trailer was. And now, many gamers, even fans of FromSoft's admittedly amazing Elden Ring, are starting to see that God of War might just be a worthy contender for the GOTY title. Next, the game is giving fans something they've wanted for a long time. There's no better way to win the GOTY than to give players something they've been really waiting for.
I'm pleased to see you awake.
Freya,
It was his choice. I couldn't take that from him.
you saved us all. I'll never forget that.
The family I thought I had was taken from me piece by piece.
And God of War Ragnarok plans on doing exactly that. Back when the game came out in 2018, it was said that the franchise's world was divided into several unique realms that players can travel to. As the storyline progressed, players went from one realm to the next, but many noticed how not all the realms were playable in 2018's installment of the popular video game franchise. In fact, out of the 9 total realms, only 5 were accessible by players. This was met with a bit of disappointment, as players thought they weren't getting the content they were promised. This is changing though, and players will now be taking a stroll down to the other realms that they didn't get to before. Among these is Svartalfheim, and we'll leave the correct pronunciation of the realm to the experts. This is a new dwarven region that players are looking to be traveling to in Ragnarok, and from the brief footage we've gotten for it, it already looks like it's set to be one of the most unique areas we've seen in a God of War game. There are industrial buildings and stunning platforms that elevate players to new heights. Plus, there are loads of puzzles for players to solve, making it fun to explore and make your way through the area. Waiting for these locked realms to finally be playable hasn't been easy, but if the other ones are just as good as Svartalfheim, then it really wouldn't be a big surprise to see the game take home the GOTY award. Not to mention, the game is revitalizing the combat system. When competing with Elden Ring, the one department that you can't skimp on at all is combat. FromSoft is known for its iconic combat system, which they've perfected over the course of a decade, if not longer. Because of this, if Ragnarok hopes to win the award, it needs to bring forward an equally interesting fighting system.
Maybe later, we can find some treats.
Okay, my turn.
Who's that, huh? Yeah, we know him.
While 2018's GOW game had decent combat, it was really no match for the sheer diversity that Elden Ring brought to the table. But the game's sequel is getting a bunch of new shiny upgrades that we think might swing things back in its favor. First of all, the developers are making better use of the triangle button. In the 2018 game, this was used just to switch weapons. It didn't really have a huge impact on the gameplay and felt pretty useless most of the time. And it seems that the developers agreed with this sentiment. They've now given it a new function: elemental signature moves. Yeah, you heard that right. We got a brief glimpse at some of these moves in the trailer, and they seem like the perfect addition to make the combat feel fresh and interesting while giving players a bit more options. Plus,
I do not wish to intrude.
This is for you too.
The sequel is also adding a bunch of new collectible gear for players too. Among these are shields, which now have their very own unique powers. Shields are taking a more active role in the game's combat this time around, and players can plop these down in the middle of fights to unleash a flurry of new powers. From lightning strikes to other power-ups, it's clear they're going to add a whole new dynamic to the fighting. Though we should mention, Elden Ring is no pushover. Don't let our compliments to God of War fool you though. FromSoft's latest open-world RPG is no pushover, and despite everything we've mentioned, it's going to be a tough battle for sure. Elden Ring has been an open-world game unlike anything we've seen in recent times. The game truly is worthy of being a part of the genre, offering players a nearly endless amount of possibilities in terms of gameplay. As soon as you're out of the tutorial area of the game, you're pretty much told to go out and do whatever it is that your heart desires. This level of freedom is pretty new, not only for FromSoft, but in video games overall. But what makes it all the more great is that the open world in the game isn't just there to make you walk 1,000 miles. Instead, it's filled to the brim with a bunch of monsters to fight, gear to acquire, and bosses to face. It's undeniably a brutally fun time from the first steps you take in Limgrave to the very end as you sit upon the Elden throne. When you add FromSoft's tried and tested combat and gameplay to the mix, you get an experience that's going to be tough to beat, and fans seem to agree. Plus, God of War Ragnarok is at a disadvantage for being a sequel. The public perception of each game can definitely sway the vote one way or the other, and it seems in this case, Ragnarok is at a bit of a disadvantage. We already mentioned how people thought of it to be an overglorified DLC before the new trailer dropped, and while that sentiment has certainly gone down a bit, some out there are still unimpressed. The thing is, because it's a sequel, the game has to go above and beyond to be able to impress fans. If it's more of the same, with just a new coat of paint, fans will like it for sure, but it really wouldn't be the groundbreaking phenomenon that Elden Ring turned out to be. And so, to beat FromSoft's Titanic RPG, God of War's latest sequel needs to pull out all the stops and deliver something amazing. From the teasers we've gotten, it's seeming more and more like this might actually happen. But the final game is what matters. Though, even if the game turns out to be just the 2018 game with a few upgrades, it'll still be one of the best games in the market. Because, let's be clear, a slightly better game of the year is still a very, very good game. We're wrapping up this video with what the fans think. The excitement around Ragnarok is pretty great, especially since the team at Sony Santa Monica was able to deliver it this year rather than delaying the game to 2023. But it's still nowhere close to the sheer hype that Elden Ring had going for it before it launched. Ever since Dark Souls 3 Final DLC came out, fans have been utterly dying for another game that would follow the FromSoft formula. And while they did tease us a bit with Sekiro, Shadows Die Twice, most gamers agreed that the game was too different to be considered a spiritual successor to the Souls games. And then came Elden Ring, a game that not only promised to be built with the same combat as the Dark Souls series, but also expanded the horizons by making the experience an open-world adventure. We shouldn't have to mention just how intensely people anticipated its release. And the best part was that the hype was real. It really did turn out that great, which is what makes it all the more amazing. Ragnarok still has to prove itself to be worthy of the excitement, and while the signs are pointed towards a great release, you never really know. Everyone thought Cyberpunk 2077 would be a masterpiece before it was released too, and we all know how that turned out. That's a wrap for this video. Do you think God of War's new sequel has what it takes to win Game of the Year 2022? Let us know in the comments below. Make sure to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more videos like this. See you in the next one.
Your choices! You killed your own son!
It wasn't my choice. I had no choice.
There's always a choice!